5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.
Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. My name is Dee Moore and I am a stage 4 kidney warrior. This podcast is dedicated to encourage, educate, and inspire as we explore all aspects of kidney disease, chronic illnesses, and health. If you have any questions or ideas for topics you would like me to cover, please get in contact with me on social media using the handle Diary of a Kidney Warrior. In today's episode, I'm bringing you a kidney warrior story. Now, there's always something you can learn from someone's story, something that can bring inspiration and hope. My guest today from Leeds, England, is security consultant Chris Hardy. Chris is married to Janet and they have 5 children. Chris's journey with kidney disease began in 2002 when he was diagnosed with lupus. Chris later received a kidney transplant in August 2020. Chris is currently training to represent Kidney Care UK at the 2022 London Marathon in October and joins me to share his story and charity fundraising campaign to raise awareness and help families affected by kidney disease. Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior, the podcast. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm very well, thank you, Dee. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to the podcast. It really is an honour to speak with you today. And as everyone knows, I absolutely love recording Kidney Warrior stories because, as I've said many times, it is so powerful to learn from people's lived experiences. So I'm really excited to hear about your story today.
Yeah, looking forward to telling the story. Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to start with my first question. And my first question is, how did your kidney warrior journey begin and how were you diagnosed?
Yeah, great question. So my journey started as a silent problem with my health, which I wasn't aware of back in 2002. Very fit and healthy at the time. Was in a squash league, cycled and run quite a lot, but noticed very, very small changes in my physicality, fitness, my well-being. Was getting a little bit more tired more than usual, which was unusual in itself. And I had a nagging problem with the side of my abdomen, which wasn't going away. And we went to, or should I say, we went to the emergency doctors. We had all the bloods taken, checked, and everything looked very healthy. But the problem didn't subside for me. And over the course of probably a couple of weeks and a number of return visits to the doctors, we did a dialysis test, which indicated that there was a problem with the urine. So on that, I was then very swiftly on the same day referred to the Sheffield Teaching Hospital, to their nephrology unit for further investigative work and some more blood work to find out the problem. And very quickly, within the course of probably 24 hours, they made an initial diagnosis of saying it was a nephrology problem, nephritis. It was described to me as an acute problem that perhaps could be treated with medication, but at the time really didn't understand or appreciate the severity of what was being said. There was some uncertainties about that. I wasn't educated. I was confused about what I was being told. The first thing that I thought about at the time was actually, am I in trouble? You know, what does this mean? Because it doesn't make any sense. What impact is that going to have on my well-being and my health? And, you know, it was explained to me that we think we can get on top of this problem with some medication, but we need you to come into hospital as an inpatient for a couple of days so we can do some further tests. And we also need to do a biopsy, which was a completely new word to me. I wasn't even aware of what that entailed. And probably within the course of about 3 days, and subsequently after having the biopsy, we found out very quickly that there was a problem with the kidney, or the kidneys, should I say, or the native kidneys. And what was presented then to me via the consultant at the nephrology department, or as an inpatient, of course, was we think you've got systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE. And I was, really bamboozled by that. Didn't know what SLE were. What does this mean now? The story's different to what it were a couple of days ago, where we think it's an acute problem. It could be treated with medicine, to now be told, well, actually, it's this unknown word that I've never heard of before, SLE. And it was described to me as your autoimmune system is superhuman. Your body is trying to kill your organs, for a better word.
Wow.
And at the moment, it's quite a powerful statement. And the consultant said, look, there are treatments available, but what we need to do now is we need to put you on a course of medication, which included quite a lot of steroid treatment, a lot of treatment around blood pressure tablets. My blood pressure was elevated. And also at the time, I had quite a lot of edema. My legs had swelled enormously over the period of probably about 4 or 5 days. And my kidneys, they were in rapid decline. And it was all attributed to what the biopsy presented to the consultant to say, well, actually, we think now it is SLE, it's systemic lupus erythematosus. We really need to do something. We need to do something quite quickly. So my couple of days visit as an inpatient for further investigation analysis actually turned out to be about a 3-week visit, all told, because my condition deteriorated quite quickly. My kidney function deteriorated quite quickly. I think it was teetering on about 20% function at one point. And all of this had happened within a space of, or the course of a matter of weeks, from my first initial problems of minor fatigue to going into hospital. We're probably talking about 3-4 weeks maximum. And during those first 3 weeks, Dee, what happened were there was lots of other things that were being presented that were linked to this problem with the kidney disease, which was born from the autoimmune disease. There was problems then with, elevated blood levels, with other complications around toxins in the body. Creatinine was very, very high. I think from memory, it was as high as 800 in terms of the count at the time.
Wow.
And to put that into perspective, I think as a normal, healthy adult, I think that runs at probably something like 90 points, that's just as an example. So I was way off the scale. And the pace at which it happened as well was enormous. It was, and it was frightening, My whole world was kind of shot to bits by something that we thought we could get to the bottom of quite quickly. And then to be presented with, actually, you've got a very rare disease, which is typically not found in adult males, and to be told, well, actually, we don't know an awful lot about it at the moment, but there is a lot of research going on. And in the 3 weeks that I was there as an inpatient, the course of treatment that was prescribed changed quite regularly. They were trying to get the cocktail of medication a level that would keep me stable before they could look at alternative interventions. Thankfully, we didn't get to a point where we needed dialysis, but there were lots of other problems and complications. I had massive problems with my joints, swelling pretty much all over my face, my hands, my arms, my legs. Core mobility was, it was affected tremendously. And just things like, laying down at night, trying to get your head down, at night was a nightmare because there was so much fluid rolling around in my body. I was almost like a spirit level, so in the day, all the fluid had drained down my body, into a better words, into my legs. And then in the morning, having been laid flat on the bed at night, sleeping, you'd wake up then with a fat face. So all these dynamics, and everything happening quite quickly, really frightening. Lots of uncertainty about, well, actually, what is this, and the internet back in the day as well wasn't as great as what it is now in terms of the wealth of information that's out there. And it's like anything, you can start to self-diagnose, and I then really started to worry and thinking about the worst outcomes with this. Yeah, it was a harrowing start to my kidney disease journey. And it progressively got worse for a period of time. I was so poorly that within probably 3 months of being diagnosed with SLE, I was treated intravenously with a cocktail of drugs, one of which was cyclophosphamide. So I went on a course of chemotherapy treatment for, I think it was 10 or 11 weeks. I can't remember now. And then that in itself brings about other challenges with that, losing all my hair. Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky because I've grown my hair, but some of the other side effects of that longer term is 20 years on, I've still not got no hair pretty much on my arms or legs, which is an odd side effect. It never seemed to return for me, but I seem to get the full head of hair back again, thankfully. Although it's, I'm a bit older and a little bit grayer now than what I were 20 years ago,
So you had a lot to deal with. I mean, from being a very physically fit person, playing squash, because I know squash is a really, really high impact sport, feeling unwell and then going through not knowing what it was. And that's something I can relate to because I didn't get my diagnosis until 7 weeks into the hospital. So I can really relate to what it's like when they're saying, oh, it could be this or it could be that. And then you're dealing emotionally and psychologically with, well, is it this and is it that? And how does that affect me? I can only imagine how difficult it was. And then to go from being told that it was acute to now having to come to terms with the fact that it's now chronic and lifelong. I can only imagine how difficult that was for you at that time. And then to then go on to having a treatment which is so strong, has so many long-lasting side effects. Again, that is a lot to deal with in a very, very short space of time. So how did you get your mind around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, in some respects, there was no time to think about it. First and foremost, front and center was all about, in some respects, getting stability, trying to get over the line in terms of, the big thing for me that I found more, really difficult was, the treatment was really invasive. It was hard work. Some of the oddities, some listeners may relate to the fact that, if you've had chemotherapy or any drugs intravenously before, is the after effects of feeling like you're out of your body. There's all of these emotions and these scenarios that are unfolding that, you've never encountered before, let alone the fact that of the worry, the uncertainty. And, just coming back to your question, it all just happened so very, very quickly. And I was very, very poorly as well, immensely poorly. And the thing for me was about rest and recovery and trying to get myself into the best position I could. I was in and out of hospital. I'd go for an outpatient appointment 1 week. I'd be in hospital again that day for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe more, depending upon the severity of what those tests were presenting. And in some respects, there was never really a time to get my head around it. I think there was more of a time of reflection about, perspective on, your health and well-being, what we're going to do when we get the other side of this, how are we going to get to the other side of it? What's it going to look like? What effect is that going to have on me longer term? Going through this journey with, from being so fit and healthy and then so quickly deteriorating. And that was the thing that worried me. But you've got all these things going on, Dee, the worry, the uncertainty, the fatigue, the outcomes from the invasive treatment that you're having. And I think for me, good time for reflection, good time for prayer, without a shadow of a doubt. I have a very good network of people around me that helped me through that, particularly family and my wife at the time. And my children were my only child at the time, Matthew. I've got 3 children to my ex-wife, and he was only about 40 months, very unaware of it all. So you've got that to the mix as well, about thinking about, longer term legacy of, what if. It's always kind of the what if, what if the worst comes to worst. And it was really bad. I remember where I had a cannula in my hand one day because they needed to administer antibiotics, and I had a cannula in my neck. It was the only place where to do it, so it's really, it was kind of I'd been down to the deepest, darkest depths in my story, which was worrying for me, but also worrying for my wife at the time, and the family and friends around me. So I don't think I ever really got to grips with it. I think I just focused more on, what can I do? And in most cases, very limited because of the fatigue.
So often when people with chronic illnesses talk about fatigue, I don't think people who don't have a chronic illness understand what we mean by that. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, because as we've spoken about before, you were a very, very fit person prior to chronic kidney disease, and now you're in a position of being tired. So when you're talking about fatigue, could you describe to the listeners how bad that is?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's two aspects to that, probably I want to handle in some respects. I always used to say, when somebody was really poorly, and particularly if somebody had a life-threatening illness, I don't want to mention the C word, but I'll use that as an example. I always used to say, well, I fight through it. I'm strong enough. I'm healthy enough. I'm not going to let it beat me. And to answer your question about the element about fatigue, for me, it was almost like running 100 miles an hour and then just hitting a brick wall. Where from one day you are really healthy, you're able to walk, you're able to run, and within the space of probably a week from being diagnosed and being in hospital as an inpatient, and then having swollen legs and physically not being able to keep yourself awake, because you've all the other complications linked to the problem with the kidney disease going hand in hand. You can't eat and drink properly. You're not getting the nutrients that you need. You're not getting the substance that you need to give you the energy, the calorific value to keep you going. And, for yourself and many of your listeners and myself, when you go on to wards as an inpatient, on a kidney ward, that you're on a kidney ward because generally everybody's asleep. 80-90% of their day is in rest, particularly for those that are really poorly. And the fatigue element is enormous. The simple things that you take for granted in life, being able to walk upstairs, if you've got swollen legs, you've got fluid in your, extra fluid that you're carrying around. And as I say, you're not getting the right nutrients and then, the right diet. Water intake, if you're on water ration as well. Yeah, it is tough, really, really, really tough. And, it was, I didn't really think about it at the time, but, very, very early on when we thought there's a problem here on the horizon, which then followed with all the investigations, the blood work, the inpatient treatment. Probably about 4 weeks before it kind of got serious, linked to the pain that I had in my abdomen. I used to work from home quite a lot, and I found myself falling asleep at the desk in my home office on a couple of occasions, which was really unusual for me. I was 27 at the time, young, fit and healthy, and I'd find myself just drifting off. Whereas, say, if you take it back a year before when I was 26, you'd be up till midnight. You wouldn't be able to sleep,
Yes. It really is really tough. And I think sometimes when people use the word tired, when people hear that, they don't hear or understand what you've just described. And I think it's really important to let people know that there are so many side effects to having kidney disease that affect people on a daily basis, that make daily life that much more challenging. I think it's important that people know how difficult the challenge is and what people have to overcome, and why we do call ourselves kidney warriors, because I think it takes a warrior to be able to handle and deal with all of the things that kidney warriors face on a daily basis. So from having the diagnosis and the treatment that you had, was the treatment successful? Did it help to control the decline of your kidney function, or did your kidneys continue to decline?
Yeah, a combination of the two, really. The chemotherapy had a profound effect, a positive, profound effect. From being diagnosed in the March of 2002, to probably the September. So what we're looking at there, probably in the course of 5 months, the 11 or 12 weeks of the treatment that I had within that period had a real profound effect in that it put an absolute stop on what was going on. It stopped the aggressive, progressive state of the lupus. It didn't necessarily have a positive effect in terms of the kidney recovering. That was longer term, that was long down the line. But it had a profound effect in terms of halting that progression of the disease and providing a period of stability. And I would say probably it was the course over, nearly 12 months after that we started to see some form of stability in terms of blood work. The results were kind of going in the right way in terms of we were getting on top of blood pressure, we were getting on top of diet, because for such a long period of time, I wasn't eating properly. I'd lost nearly 3 stone in weight in those 4 months because I wasn't able to eat. Yeah, and that was another negative effect of kidney disease and what was going on, because I was yearning for food. I've got a healthy appetite, and I was yearning for food, and I was drawn to tears some nights. I couldn't eat. I wanted it, my body wanted it, but the disease and the problems with the kidney wouldn't allow me to eat. It was just physically impossible. And I'd say from the end of the course of chemotherapy in the middle of September of 2002, probably up until the May or the June of 2003, we then started to see some marked improvements in terms of, stable blood work, on top of blood pressure, starting to eat and drink a little bit better and a little bit normally. And the big thing was the function was starting to return. Ironically, it went as low as 20-25% when I was originally diagnosed with the lupus, but it bounced back enormously and miraculously to about 58% at its peak. But that was from 2003 to 2008. It took nearly 5 years of really careful living, looking after myself, doing all the right things, basically, and taking all the advice and guidance from the consultants that I think helped get to that point. But it was short-lived. That 58% was the last hurrah. It was the point where we probably peaked, and then it kind of went, my function just steadily declined, stabilized at about 38-40%, and it stayed there for quite a while. But it was nearly 5 years post-treatment that it took to get the kidney back to its normal level. But unfortunately, because of the high blood pressure and the medication and the treatment, the kidney had sustained quite a lot of scarring. And as I'm sure yourself and a lot of your listeners will know, where your kidney's scarred, there's no recovery from that, It's dead tissue. It will never come back, So, it was a long journey to get to that point. And as you know, it didn't stop there.
So I know that you went on to have a kidney transplant. How did that come about?
My kidney function had stabilised, as we talked about earlier. And in 2018, towards the back end of 2018, actually, I suffered a bad bout of gout, excruciating pain. If anybody knows, I'm sure some of your listeners yourself can relate to this. Even just having the bed blankets on, you can be excruciating to touch. And I had this horrible bout of gout, and I couldn't walk so much that I was on my hands and knees. It was awful.
So for people who don't know what gout is, could you explain what gout is?
Yeah, my interpretation is that when the kidneys aren't working efficiently and they're not clearing out all the toxins, one of the things that happens is that your body can have a buildup of uric acid. And the uric acid then creates crystals, and they collect around your joints, and they really, really like big toes. for
Right.
whatever reasons. I mean, I've had gout in my hands, I've had gout in my face and my jaw, I've had it in my knee. I was diagnosed with housemaid's knee once with gout when my knee had swelled terribly. But yeah, the onset of those crystals collecting around your joints means that your feet, your toes, they swell enormously. Lots of inflammation, very hot and, very uncomfortable. You can't wear shoes, you can't walk properly. And for me, when that happened late 2018, I was on my hands and knees. It wasn't an unfamiliar story for me. I used to suffer terribly with gout very, very early on with the kidney disease. But we seemed to get on top of it because we were managing that with allopurinol. And for this to happen, whilst that was being managed with prescribed medication, it was a worry. So we checked into the local GP prescribed what I call the magic pills, trying to think colchicine, a couple of three of those, and, normally gout would subside, but for me it didn't. It's quite aggressive. There was quite a lot of buildup of this uric acid, a good indication kidney's not happy, something's not right. And I was then referred, having the GP having read back my notes from my former GP and the consultant notes at the Sheffield Teaching Hospital where I was originally under their care. He very quickly referred me then to St. James to have further investigative work done, blood work, tests, etc. And when the blood work came back, my function had deteriorated to about 19%. For no known real reason. It was, as I say, it was probably 38, 40%. Waxed and waned, it might have been 36 and 41, but, depending upon diet, what you're doing, if you're tired, other things like stress has an enormous effect on kidneys, and particularly if you've got high blood pressure. There was a lot going on back in 2018, personally, emotionally. And I don't know, was that a trigger? But what we found out very, very quickly, again, was the kidney the kidneys had deteriorated enormously. And it wasn't predicted. I thought that I was going to live a relatively healthy, stable life on the function I had. And it wasn't meant to be, because that over the course then probably of 3 years, the function then just continued to deteriorate. It was in a decline. We couldn't stop what was happening. There's a course of treatment in terms of blood pressure medication. We couldn't get on top of the blood pressure. And there was a lot of scarring, the tissuing around of the kidneys. It was scarred, and we just couldn't get to the bottom of it. And over the course of, as I say, probably 20 months, the kidneys declined from what was 19% GFR right down to 7% at its lowest pre-transplant for me. We'd had the nurse, the dialysis team come out to our home. We planned dialysis at home, the course of treatment that we were going to have. We'd converted a room specifically for this next stage in the journey in terms of the treatment and, what quality of life, being able to have that flexibility of having dialysis treatment at home. And in late 2019, I was approached by the team to say, now we're looking at dialysis. We need to think about now getting you onto the transplant register in readiness, because the wait can be anything from 18 months to 3.5, 4, 5 years. There's no golden ticket, but we need to think about doing all the preparation and getting you ready for if we're ever in a position to transplant you with a kidney. And then, of course, in 2020, we had COVID hit. And all bets were off then, pretty much. I wasn't going into hospital like so many people. Surgeries were cancelled, outpatient clinics cancelled. And for a period of about 5 months, without having any real intervention with the consultants at Leeds, we were just kind of continuing with medication. I was then approached in the March to say, look, we're halting any transplants. We're ceasing any transplants now because of COVID. We will let you know when we're opening up the register again and we're going to start doing transplants. And that call came in the March. I think it was probably about a week after the announcement by the Prime Minister about the lockdown. And then if you fast forward then to probably the May, I got then another call in the May to say, look, we are a handful of hospitals that are doing transplants. Not all hospitals are doing them around the UK. We think for you, the benefits of a transplant far outweigh the risks of getting COVID right now. Would you like to go back on the list? Absolutely, yeah. Why wouldn't you? I would like to go back on the list. And, I was at the point there then where, I hadn't even started dialysis because everything came to a halt. We'd done the pre-assessment at home. We'd done the assessment for what my dialysis needs would work for me, my family, my wife, and all of that just stopped. And to get that call to say, we're going to put you back on the list was, it was a real sense of relief, if I'm honest, thinking that there's progress. And as daft as it seems, the progress is as simple as getting a call to say, we're going to put you back on the list. That was enormous for me back in the May. And to add to that, we had a wedding planned, which was cancelled because of COVID. Like so many other people up and down the UK, we had that rearranged on a couple of occasions to be cancelled, all around what was going on with health, being put back onto the transplant list. We finally got the wedding on the third time of asking rearranged for the 1st of August. And it was so bizarre. We got married, we had a week off work, we had a bit of a honeymoon, and we'd returned to work for a week. And then on a Saturday morning to get a call on your caller ID from the renal transplant nurse team, you think, oh, what are you ringing me for on a Saturday, Something's going on.
Yeah.
And so I got the call at 10:51 on the 15th of January to say, we think we've got you a kidney. Take a minute to take that in. We're going to call you back in 15 minutes just so you can get your wife together. There's some prep. There's some things that we need to do and we need to talk to you about and expectations. So, what a journey in terms of getting to that place in such a difficult time with uncertainty and what was going around in the world, with COVID and everything. Yeah, elated at getting the call. And very, very nervous, the uncertainty, major operation. Yeah, but very, very excited at the same time.
That is incredible. I mean, to get the call so soon into your journey without going on to dialysis and also getting married and planning that as well and everything that was happening in the world to do with the pandemic, that must have been so happy but frightening all at the same time. I mean, going into the hospital during COVID obviously was a very different experience than anybody had experienced before. Not being able to have visitors while you have such a major operation. How did you feel about that? What was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about that. And, I was actually worried about it for my wife. She worries. She's a worrier. For all the right reasons. We all do it. It's our nature as human beings. But what I will say is that Leeds teaching hospitals were fantastic. When we got that call and we arrived at the kidney clinic, if you will, on the floor, on the ward, they actually permitted my wife, Janet, to come in with me, to sit with me while we underwent the pre-assessment tests and the COVID and the swabs and the cleaning and the preparation. And there's a lot going on, a lot to take in. And, one of the things we've not mentioned to yourself or your listeners is my wife used to be a nurse at ICU at the same hospital for 13, 14 years. And for me, it was a real comfort that they were very accommodating at a time where there was a lot of uncertainty about COVID and a lot of restrictions that were going on, but they were very, very, very accommodating. They situated us in a room off the ward, away from an area of where it may have been a risk for anybody that was very poorly, or they'd received a transplant or were waiting for a transplant, and they were very, very accommodating. And Janet stayed with me right up until, as I say, we arrived, I think it was just shortly after 1, maybe 1:30 in the afternoon. And Janet stayed with me till just about 7:30 in the evening, because there's a lot going on in the background. I didn't realise a lot of what goes on. Kidneys arrive, kidneys having tests, lots of people being pulled together, all in the background. And all over this course of this time, Janet was allowed to stay with me, and she left about 7:30. And I remember getting a call from Janet about 8:10, and it was too late. I'd been whisked away. The hospital were very, very good with visiting. I was in a private room for a couple of days, during that early process of recovery. And they were great. Janet could come and visit me an hour a day. And that continued right up until I left the hospital on the Friday. And they were amazing. They were phenomenal. They were very accommodating, very sympathetic to that. And, I'm very grateful for them enabling me to have somebody with me. Because, there's a lot of uncertainty. I was worried. I was frightened a little bit, being honest about it. I'm going to go through something that I've never done before. And it was a great comfort knowing that my wife was there before we had the procedure, because it was comforting for me. I'm sure it's comforting for Janet as well, knowing that we were together.
So following on from your transplant, what difference has the transplant made to your life?
Well, I've always had a raging appetite, and, and that's come back with a vengeance, that first and foremost. I think, why is that? Why would listeners say, well, actually, you can eat properly? And the way I phrase it is your kidneys start to chew through things a bit better. It's like a poorly kidney is like having a wet sponge, where if you hang it up and don't squeeze it, that's all that's coming out. If you imagine a really healthy kidney and you take a sponge and you squeeze it, and that's the only analogy I can give to getting a good kidney and the transformation in terms of I can eat and drink normally, and my kidney is doing all the things that it needs to do to remove the waste, to keep the good stuff, and to ensure that I'm not retaining any fluid. And as I say, the big thing for me that I noticed more so within probably the first week was the sudden weight loss, because of the amount of fluid that I was retaining. I wasn't aware I was retaining. It was just normal for me. I'd been like that for such a long time, didn't really realise. And that for me was the big thing. So the weight loss, but also being able to confidently take a drink and know that, you're not going to retain it, was massive.
So things like the tiredness as well, did that immediately improve?
Yeah, immediately. So much so, before I had the transplant, one of the things that started happening was I was immensely cold all the time. From the January of 2020 till the point of receiving the transplant in August, I was immensely cold all the time. If the sun wasn't out blaring and it was red hot, I was cold. I remember when we had a week off work, we went to Whitby to see some friends. It was a mild August day. It wasn't particularly hot in terms of the sun beating down, but it was mild. It was, say 18, 19 degrees. I was sat outside with a sleeping bag because it was, immensely cold. So, yeah, the fatigue almost seemed to have disappeared overnight. I was more active. Yes, I was in a period of convalescence and recovery, and, you're not working now for 3 months. You need to have complete rest. And I did. And, I was very, very compliant with that respect. But I noticed, eating and drinking, fatigue had almost disappeared overnight. And the other thing, I wasn't as cold, And in the winter time, in the December, we actually had some bad snow. And I remember being out with the dog, and I was walking the dog, and I just had my shorts on. And I was always, bizarre. And I was always like this, years and years and years ago, the first break of spring, you get to the end of March. Yeah, it might still be a little bit nippy outside, for some, but I'd always try and get the shorts on. And for many years, that almost kind of, disappeared into the ether, that habit. But yeah, I was out and about in December with shorts on. And then when we got into the new year, I remember it being one of the coldest, 2021, it was bitterly cold in Leeds, -1, -2, -3 some days, really, really cold with a wind chill factor. And I was out walking the dog and I had my shorts on. I had a fleece on top and a hat, but I only had my shorts on. And the reason why I had them on that particular day was I just thought, oh, well, they're there, and I'll just grab those and put those, and I'll walk the dog and I'll get some proper clothes on when I get back. So, yeah, those three things for me. Yeah, fatigue overnight kind of disappeared. Concentration levels improved enormously. My health and well-being around, diet improved immensely. And the cold shivers just kind of disappeared overnight.
That is incredible. It is amazing the difference that it has made to your quality of life. So much so that I know that you're paying it forward by running a marathon. I know that you're going to be doing the TCS London Marathon and representing Kidney Care UK. So tell us about that.
Well, I can tell you I've never done a marathon before. Yeah, I was an avid runner when I was at school, but, that was a long, long time ago. So, yeah, why a marathon and why do I want to do it? Well, there's two things for me, really, I guess. One is that it's a great privilege to run the London Marathon. I think it's probably the single most important challenge for me physically in terms of, getting over the line, but also being able to represent Kidney Care UK for me is the story about the hope and also the great work that the NHS do. And also the team at Kidney Care are fantastic. And, in terms of what the little bit I can do to raise awareness around kidney disease, by running 26.1 miles around London and trying to get a few quid along the way for doing that is enormous, because that little bit in terms of what I can do and the charitable funds that I can raise, that's going to help some of those families now that are, they're starting their journey or they're midway through what that journey is for that individual. There's families. And I just think, I'm in a position now where I want to do something that demonstrates the real success and, and the outcome of, having a transplant. And I want to do something meaningful. Is it a lasting legacy? I don't think so. There may be more, but I want to be able to do this, not just for me, but I want to be able to do it with the help and support of Kidney Care to enable them to continue to raise awareness of kidney disease, provide that much needed financial support to families that are going through their journey. So, yeah, I say me and my wife, we've been training. We've paused it momentarily over a few weeks. We had a bad cough and cold, chest infection. Thankfully, we didn't have COVID. I had some investigative work done on my transplanted kidney, so I was taking it steady. But yeah, we're picking things back up now. We're now full steam ahead, raising awareness about the cause, raising awareness of kidney care. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that challenge. It is going to be the biggest, toughest challenge that I've ever done, but insignificant in some respects, because thinking back to what I'd gone through and how difficult it was for me, I think it's going to help others, in terms of, that financial aid and support that Kidney Care can provide. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Yeah, definitely. And I think we've got 40 runners in the group this year, all of different abilities. I'm not setting my stall out with a time. Yeah, I'm just going to get over the line, whatever that looks like. Hopefully they've not put all the barriers away.
That is absolutely amazing. And your heart towards giving to others and supporting others and raising awareness, is admirable. So I'm wishing you all the very best, and the group that will be joining with you as well. I wish you all the best with completing the marathon. So for anybody who wants to donate or sponsor you, how do they do so?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The free gifts that would help enormously, Dee, is that I've got a Facebook page that I've created. Anybody can find me on Facebook if they search for Kidney Warrior Leeds. which is all one word. On there is details around sponsorship, my Just Giving page. I've got a text to donate number, which we've kindly set up with the help and support from Kidney Care. So if anybody can spare a fiver, they can text Kidney Chris to 70460. And there is a disclaimer on the Facebook page around if you don't want any info, you need to text Kidney Chris, no info, essentially. But yeah, people, your listeners can find me on Facebook, Kidney Warrior Leeds. It'd be immense if everybody could like and share that page and just help me get out and about and get some awareness about that challenge. And yeah, the donations can come through the text donate or via the Just Giving page. I've got an Instagram account now that's set up. So it's the similar thread. If you look for Kidney Warrior Leeds on Instagram, you'll see me on there. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, Kidney Warrior Leeds. And again, on Just Giving, it's Kidney Warrior Leeds as well.
Thank you. And yes, let's get behind Chris and the rest of the runners in raising money and awareness for kidney patients across the UK. So that is Kidney Warrior Leeds on Facebook. You can text Kidney Chris on 70460. And on Instagram, it's Kidney Warrior Leeds. But I'll also put all of that information in the description box. So let's really get behind Chris and support him in this absolutely amazing cause.
Thanks, Dee. Yeah, it'd be great.
So can you give a final word of encouragement for the listeners?
Yeah, final word of encouragement. I think the word of encouragement I can give to anybody is to have faith and just believe. I think you always need to surround yourself with a great support network of help and love and care. Laughter is massive. We've talked about that earlier. Everybody's going on their own journey. I think that it's good for people to talk to each other, to understand and recognize the journey you're going through and to know that you aren't going through that journey on your own. And kidney disease, I think, is probably a disease that's probably not seen as much out in the public domain as other known illnesses and diseases. So yeah, connect, talk to each other, care for each other, and just have some faith and belief in, getting over the line and getting to where you need to be. I've got great faith in the NHS, and I know we've talked about that earlier, and they are fantastic, But yeah, that for me is, in simple terms, there's a little bit of a closing statement. It's not one word. There's a lot to it. You've got to believe and have a little bit of faith along the way and talk to each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing that word of encouragement, and also all the very best with the marathon. We're going to be cheering you on, and please, everybody, let's get behind Chris as he runs this marathon, 26.1 miles.
Yes, 26.1, I believe, yeah.
That is a lot. So let's get behind Chris. Let's believe for him, believe with him, and please send your donations through. And thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thanks again, Dee.
Thank you for listening to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. And don't forget that you can contact me on social media using the handle Diary of a Kidney Warrior. Please do subscribe to the podcast and please do tell a friend. New episodes of this podcast are released every other Monday. Until next time, take care and choose to live.
Diary of a Kidney Warrior, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.